Hello and welcome back to a series of lectures on ornamentals. Today we will be talking about gladiolus, an important plant which has an adaptability to different climatic conditions as well as to different habitats. In terms of history, this is considered to be a plant which was introduced into almost whole of the world from African continent. In terms of its number as well as variability, taxonomically, it has almost 260 species reported to be available for cultivation as well as for their ornamental value. Out of these, roughly estimated 230 species are actually archaeologically as well as historically reported to have evolved and originated in Africa, and the remaining species are claimed to have evolved in Asian and adjacent areas of Europe. When we look at the plant as such, it has two important aspects. One, it has a durability wherein it can sustain its productive potential for as long as one desires or as long as one can maintain the habitat and ecodynamic conditions in which it grows. And second important aspect is that its productive potential does not in any way get hampered in relation to the variation in climatic conditions or sometimes even the habitat conditions. Ordinarily, the plant prefers those habitats where the summer is usually hot, but actually is not too wet, so that the habitat in which the plant is cultivated does not have an excessive moisture content. It has been seen that once the plant is tried to be domesticated as an ornamental, fundamentally two important habitats are to be analyzed. One, where the soil has a normal seepage potential, that is wherein the soil does not retain excessive quantities of moisture, and second, where the sunny conditions are dominant throughout the phase in which flowers are produced by the bulbous portion or the cormy portion of this plant. Ordinarily, once the plant is to be domesticated or commercially cultivated, one must first of all analyze what sort of habitat it prefers. If it is grown under those conditions where the soil has an excessive moisture retention potential, that soil actually depletes not only productive potential but also the survival pattern not only of the bulb but also of the flowers. However, if it is cultivated in those areas where the soil has the normal seepage as well as drainage potential and the moisture is also getting continuously evaporated as well as added, in those areas the flowering pattern as well as the survival potential is continuously maintained by the plant. Second important aspect about this plant is that it usually needs to be planted in those areas where the floral portion, that is the inflorescence, remains exposed continuously from the developmental phase up to the phase in which it is actually sprouting and the flower is in its bloom. This requirement or this condition has been seen not only to monitor the productive potential but also monitor the quality of this particular flower or ornamental. It has been seen that out of the reported 260 species, commercially almost all have been tried to be domesticated as well as cultivated, yet their productive potential as well as their quality has been seen to get altered if there is any variation in the habitat or ecoedaphic condition. This is primarily governed by the factor wherein the bulbous portion or the cormy portion actually are detrimented by either excessive moisture or excessive dryness or excessive humidity or sometimes even higher temperatures. The areas where it is commercially cultivated predominantly are seen to be temperate in their climatic conditions, and wherein the summer period, that is the phase in which it actually is in peak of sprouting, is the period during which the temperature does not actually increase beyond 35 degrees Celsius. Now, after its discovery, especially in the African continent, it was seen that if it is domesticated, after domestication it has fundamentally two basic requirements. One, the habitat in which it can be domesticated and commercially cultivated, and second, wherein the plant or the basic propagule of the plant, that is the bulbous portion or the corby portion, are maintained for as long as one desires or as long as one needs. This pattern has also automatically governed or monitored and altered its commercial cultivation practice as well as potential. In domesticated gardens or commercial parks, it has been seen to be cultivated as a row plantation at the back of the beds, in which other ornamental plants, especially of those which are dwarfer in size, are cultivated. Once the beds have been identified, it is only having two fundamental requirements. One, that the bed should have a soft sandy textured soil, that is, wherein the seepage of moisture is normal, and second, where the organic material or the organic content of the soil is slightly higher in concentration. And usually at the time of sowing, the digging of the soil is to be carried out to a depth of 6 to 9 inches, so that the soil gets loosened up, and in this soil which has been dug up, addition of NPK and sometimes urea has been seen to facilitate only the vegetative growth of the particular plant. Once the soil has been dug out, it is important to allow the soil to slightly loosen up as well as dry, so that the bulbous portions that are planted are getting exposed to their suitable habitat. Ordinarily, once the bud are to be, these bulbous are to be planted in the flower beds or in the row plantations, one fundamental requirement is that the buddy portion or the bulbous portion should be thoroughly scraped off whatever waste material of the previous year's cultivation is there. Sometimes it can be the wall of the bulbous portion, sometimes the parts of the rootlets or roots, sometimes even the muddy and sandy or other soil texture adhere to the bulbous portion. It has been seen that once the bulbs or the corms have been identified, they are to be planted in rows, and usually if it is to be planted as a single row in a particular bed, the distance between adjacent buds is on an average from 6 to 9 inches. As you can see, they are planted in rows at a distance of 6 to 9 inches. However, if these are to be cultivated as a complete bed plantation, that is wherein the whole bed is used for cultivation of these, ordinarily we find that the row plantation is followed, and wherein distance between rows and distance between corms in the same row is almost normally same, that is on an average 6 to 9 inches between the bulbs and 6 to 9 inches between the rows. Then once the bulbs have been sown, it is essential to cover them completely with the soil and try to harden up the soil around each bulb, so that the absorptive potential as well as the aeration of that particular soil is improved for the growth pattern of this bulbous and cormy portion. Ordinarily, if the soil is too dry, in that case after sowing of these, the irrigation is important, as you can see, because it has been seen that the irrigation actually facilitates the sprouting of the vegetative phase of this particular ornamental. However, in case the soil is moist, that is where after preparation of the soil either natural irrigation in the form of rain or artificial irrigation in the form of being provided water, etc., has moistened the soil, in that case irrigation is not essential, so that the developmental pattern, that is the vegetative growth of the plant, gets facilitated by the medium itself or by the substrate itself. Once the foliage starts to develop, at that stage one should always monitor two important characters or factors. One should always see whether the foliage that is actually arising from the cormy portion remains erect. This is primarily important because the erectness of this in turn facilitates the erect development of the inflorescence, which actually facilitates the improvement of the ornamental value of this. Once the vegetative phase is complete, at that stage one should monitor whether the bed in which it has been cultivated or the area in which it has been grown is actually receiving proper irrigation as well as drainage. Here, one important factor is that if irrigation is in excess, that is wherein the moisture remains in the bed in which the plant has been cultivated, that irrigation in turn has been seen either to damage the bulbous portion or sometimes negatively affect the floral production of the plant. However, in case the bed actually becomes over dry, that is wherein the evaporative mechanism because of the excessive temperatures or high temperatures is dominant, in that case regular irrigation is to be provided so that the developmental pattern of the plant as such as well as its productive potential in terms of flowers is maintained. Ordinarily, once the bulbs have been planted, it has been seen that it takes on an average from a period of 15 to sometimes a period of 30 days to reach a stage wherein the bud formation begins. As you can see, now this bud formation actually reflects that the plant has reached a stage wherein now its ornamental production, that is the production of the flowers, is reached its initial stage. At this stage, addition of nutrients has been seen to improve not only productive potential but also the sustainability of this floral part of this particular bulbous plant. Then once the nutrients have been added, it has been seen that digging the soil around the basal portion of the plant is actually important so that this organic matter or organic nutrient along with the some inorganic nutrients actually gets completely mixed up with the soil so that the plant absorbs it and facilitates the developmental pattern of the inflorescence as well as flowers. Whenever these nutrients are added, the irrigation should be monitored till the flower reaches its peak of development as well as its ornamental value. At this stage, two ways are usually adapted. One, if it is cultivated purely as a domestic ornamental or ornamental in a park for the ornamental value of that, in that case one tends to monitor the plant as long as the flowers are sprouting and each reaches its peak of its developmental pattern. However, if this is cultivated to be traded either at the local markets or sometimes even international markets, at that stage one usually tends to harvest once only a few of the basal flowers have sprouted and the above flowers are in the bud form, as you can see again here. This is important because it has been seen that at this stage once the inflorescence as a whole, that is the basal flower to the terminal flower is harvested, that inflorescence can either be traded in the local markets, sometimes even in national markets, sometimes it can be traded into international markets. Reason for this is that if a proper medium is provided to the basal portion of the inflorescence wherein specific nutrients, especially salts and other nutrients are provided, it has a potential to sustain its floral as well as buddy condition for as long as one desires, provided the protective covering or sometimes polythene bags are put around these flowers. It is primarily important because in this case the commercial value of the flower as well as the trading quality of the flower improves. However, there are two drawbacks of this. First drawback is that if at the time of harvesting the basal portion of the inflorescence gets damaged, that is wherein the absorptive mechanism of the inflorescence gets hampered, it has been seen that within a short duration almost all the open flowers and unopened buds tend to get destroyed. In this case, ordinarily it has been seen that use of either a sharp knife or sometimes a sharp scissor is considered to be important. As you can see, the basal portion of the inflorescence is obliquely cut so that the absorptive mechanism of the inflorescence is facilitated by that, and immediately after being harvested, this is in need of being kept or being stored in aquatic medium, especially water, so that there is enough moisture available in the stalk of the inflorescence so that its survival pattern is facilitated. At this stage, it has been seen that if we want to store it in a pot at home, in that case addition of some specific components, especially either certain sugars, especially glucose or sometimes even sucrose, or sometimes even salt medias or saline structures are added so that the survival pattern of that particular flower gets slightly facilitated. It has been seen that by this way these ornamentals, especially these gladiolus, can be stored from a minimum period of 7 days, sometimes to a maximum of some 20 or even 25 days. However, There again another requirement is that one should alter or change the water regularly, either alternately or at 2 or 3 day intervals. This phenomenon has also seen to improve the color variation as well as the productive potential of the plant under natural habitats. If during the inflorescence development or during the senescence phase, certain specific nutrients are added to the habitat in which these are cultivated, those nutrients tend to improve not only quality of the production, but also the storage potential of these flowers. This is primarily because the bulbous or cormy portion, once they absorb these nutrients, especially salty or sugary nutrients, they have been seen to improve not only productive quality, but also the storage potential of these. However, one of the fundamental drawbacks of these plants is that if the height of the inflorescence is slightly longer, as you can see here, it needs or it is in need of being provided support to which one has to actually incline it so that it actually can remain erect. The problem here is that the weightage of the number of flowers tends to break the basal part of the inflorescence, so that these flowers sometimes during their vegetative phase also tend to droop sideways, again as you can see. This drawback has been overcome either by developing dwarf varieties, that is where the height of the plant as well as the height of the inflorescence is shorter, or developing those varieties where the flower number is higher, inflorescence size is higher, but wherein the main axis or the stem of the plant is slightly stronger and thicker in its texture, which in turn can support. These are considered to be landmark achievements of those institutions where the development of floriculture has reached a peak of its production. Further, under varied climatic conditions, especially in temperate areas, it has been seen that the developmental pattern as well as the growth can sometimes get altered by the alteration in climatic conditions. In temperate areas, if the summer is of dwarfer duration, that is, it is slightly shorter, in that case it has been seen that in turn affects negatively the productive potential as well as the survival pattern of the gladioles. However, in case the summer is longer, wherein the spring is slightly hotter, it has been seen that the flower development in gladioles actually gets initiated sometimes even in the months of April, which is much earlier than its normal developmental phase. In this case, a practice has been developed wherein people tend to plant these at different phases during the summer as well as during early and late spring. That variation has been seen to actually help in maintaining these gladioles almost throughout the season under these conditions. However, if one tends to cultivate them at slightly highly subalpine or alpine areas, I can quote an example of areas like Ladakh or some parts of Sikkim and some parts of the Himachal Pradesh. In those areas, they tend to plant it much later than the normal practice is. This is primarily because in these areas the suitable temperature for gladioles actually gets started much later, in either late spring or sometimes even in early summer, and therefore they tend to plant these either in the month of May or sometimes even in the first week of June, and that in turn facilitates the survival of these up to the months of October, sometimes even November. However, in these areas, one of the fundamental drawbacks that has been seen is that once the flower reaches peaks of the developmental pattern, they tend to lose their productive potential because of the variation in the temperature, and we can see this resulting in the dehiscence of the flowers or sometimes even the whole inflorescence. Now, under all these conditions, the fundamental requirement of these plants is that one should not harvest the bulby and corny portion prior to a stage wherein the above ground portion actually tends to show variation in color. It has been seen that as soon as the above ground portion of the bulbous plant shows variation in color, that is, it turns from green first to pale, then to white, yellow, sometimes even to blackish, it is seen that at that stage one should harvest it and try to again keep them under shady conditions so that the bulbous portions or the cormy portions are actually attaining or absorbing whatever nutrient content is lying in the foliar part. At this stage, one must try to monitor whether these bulbs and corny portions are completely dry and try to divide them or separate them into different groups on the basis of the size. As you can see, the main bulb is kept on one side and the smaller bulblets are kept on the other side, because bulbs can be commercially cultivated next year also, while as the bulblets are only grown under nursery conditions, so that within a couple of years they will reach a productive stage of the ornamentals. At this stage, ordinarily the main bulbs along with their main axis are tied into smaller bundles, again as you can see, and tried to be hanged in the storehouse, so that during winter or during the cooler climatic conditions they are able to maintain and sustain whatever nutrient as well as moisture content they have in them. This is primarily required because during storage they have a potential to sometimes lose their productive as well as the commercial quality. In the month of spring, when the plantation season is approaching, usually the above portions, that is the main axis, is cut off and the bulbous parts or the tuberous parts are then tried to be identified or separated into smaller groups and kept ready for the plantation. Ordinarily, it has been seen that every year the productive potential of these is not only getting improved in terms of number of bulbs produced, but also it is showing a tendency of replacing the destroyed bulbs by slightly better and improved bulbs. This has actually been responsible for making this one of the most widely cultivated commercial ornamental in almost every temperate as well as tropical parts of the world. However, the dominance is mainly in the temperate areas. Those who are interested in its commercial cultivation should try to analyze these on the basis of not only color variation but also size variation, and try to keep them isolated, so that in the next phase of cultivation, on the basis of color variation, on the basis of size variation, on the basis of productive variation, one can keep them separately in different beds, so that one can not only use them as a domestic ornamental but also can trade them as a commercial ornamental on the basis of size variation, color variation as well as productive variation. I hope those of you who are interested in making this as a commercial ornamental should actually try to first analyze what are the basic requirements for its cultivation, storage as well as commercial cultivation, and then systematically try to develop a protocol for its commercial cultivation as well as maintenance under specific conditions in which they want to cultivate it. I hope that this particular lecture has helped you to analyze as to how, under which conditions and through which practice one can make gladiolus a commercial ornamental. Thank you.